Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. This virtual public hearing is called to order. The Committee on General Government Operation, Appropriation, and Housing is now called to order. Today is Friday, May 15. The time is 9 o'clock. Welcome to everyone connected by Zoom and those tuning in via television or the YouTube channel. Thank you for your patience and accommodating this Zoom platform while we maintain healthy emergency physical distancing mandates. Public notices for this public hearing were disseminated via email to all senators and all main media broadcasting outlets on Friday, May 8th and on Tuesday, May 12th. The general rules is the Zoom meeting is hosted by my staff, and we'll mute all Zoom participants until called upon by the chair. So I'll be watching out for everyone. As soon as you signal me, we'll unmute you. Members of the committee or the legislature wishing to speak may indicate by desired chair through the in-app chat feature. Individuals testifying shall first be recognized by the chair, by myself before speaking, and begin by stating their name for record-keeping purposes. When called to speak, please ensure that you are unmuted. Committee members will be allowed to pose a question to an individual testifying for a round and will be provided another round. So we'll do one question and then we'll come back, and if we have to do more rounds, then we'll do so. Question testimony shall be confined to the substance or nature of the agenda. Personal inference as to the character or the motive of any senator or any individual testifying is not permitted. Any violation of this general rule of conduct will result in removal from the public hearing by the host. Please ensure that your video remains on throughout the hearing. Participants must be visible at all times and not engage in other activities during the hearing. Failure to maintain visibility may cause your removal from the meeting live stream. The agenda today, we will be hearing bill number 330-35, COR, introduced by Senator Kelly Mars Titano and co-sponsored by myself. An act to amend section 10101 and 10102 and to add a new section 10124, each of chapter 10, title 3, Guam Code annotated relative to permitting absentee voting in the event of an imminent or urgent threat resulting from a public health crisis or disease outbreak. I'd like to acknowledge my colleagues that have joined me today. I see on the room here, we have Madam Speaker, Speaker Tina Munoz Barnes. We have Senator Amanda Shelton, our legislative secretary. We have, looking at the screen here, we have Senator Pito Terlai, we have Senator Will Castro, we have Senator Therese Terlai, we have the core, I apologize, Senator Regine Besco-Lee, ma'am, and we also have the Senator Mary Torres, but especially we do have Senator Kelly Mars Titano, the author of the bill. And we have, who? Selim Mullins should be coming on. We also have Senator Mary Torres here, but I haven't seen her picture yet. That's Senator. We also have in attendance, my colleagues, we have the director of the Guam Election Commission, Ms. Maria Panglinan, and one testimony by the Citizens for Accountability, which is Mr. Kennedy Anguero, that will be giving testimony. Let's see if there's anybody else. Hopefully I didn't miss anybody. We will begin with the I would like to invite Senator Kelly Marsan to introduce the bill and give her introduction. And then we'll move from there with the testimony from Ms. Panglina and then to Mr. Kennedy Anguero. All right? Thank you. Senator Mars Titano, hold on, we're gonna unmute you.
Seduce Masi, Mr. Chair, for having this public hearing and for everyone for being here today. A global and island crisis exists due to the outbreak of the novel coronavirus disease 2019, otherwise known as COVID-19, which may negatively impair the efficient operation of voting for this year's scheduled elections. The Center for Disease Control is encouraging voters to use voting methods that minimize direct contact with other people, such as mail-in methods of voting, if allowed in the jurisdiction. However, current law does not allow this as an option for the people of Guam. It does allow for absentee voting for a variety of reasons, but it does not go beyond those traditional reasons to incorporate this new situation of being in a public health crisis where we have a very contagious disease to contend with. The Civil Liberties Union recommends that multiple methods of requesting an absentee ballot, such as online, be made available to voters. That ballots postmarked by election day are accepted and counted. In-person secure drop boxes be made available through election day through the district until the polls closed, and for states to begin processing absentee ballots as quickly as possible. In short, Bill 330 allows for absentee voting in the event of a public health crisis or a disease outbreak such as we're experiencing right now. The bill's intent is to protect our right to vote while also protecting the health and well-being of us all. It is a very simple law, or excuse me, it's a very simple bill. We already have an absentee vote ballot system. This bill simply adds public health crisis or disease outbreak to the several reasons as to why one can request to vote by absentee ballot. The bill then allows GEC, the Guam Election Commission, who have the expertise to determine when and how voters can request for absentee ballots prior to election day and how that process might unfold. This process must be open and adopted according to the bill by resolution by the board. So it's still meant to go through many processes for ensuring that everything has been thought through thoroughly. Additionally, it does not impact or take away from those who prefer to cast their votes in person. They will still be allowed to do so. Mail is actually the default voting method in 5 states: Washington, Oregon, Utah, Colorado, and our neighbor, in a sense, Hawaii. 29 states allow voters to vote by absentee ballot with no reason required. So for those states, I won't list them all, but it's from Maine to Florida to Alaska as well. And in 2018, more than 31 million Americans cast their ballots by mail. So that was about 26 of the election participants. 234 signatures are already on a vote by mail petition on Guam, which was, to my understanding, started just a few days ago. So it will probably collect more people signing on to that petition as time goes on. Some of the issues with voting in person during a public health crisis owe to the very contagious nature of it. And of course, currently we understand there is no cure or vaccine. This bill would allow for compliance with social distancing restrictions by minimizing contact with other people. Some of the issues are that there is probably going to be a longer wait time and processing time for voting as we have traditionally in person. The longer one is exposed to others, the more potential to contract the disease. And the difficulty for many to stand in lengthy lines for long periods of time. We have high rates of comorbidity, meaning that people who have a variety of diseases that may make them more vulnerable to COVID-19 and its effects. We have high rates of diabetes and heart disease, among other issues. And so this perhaps not only makes them more vulnerable, but it makes it more difficult for them to stand in what may be lengthier lines. And securing childcare may also be difficult during this time, as our daycare centers, we're not sure of the status of whether they're going to be open or whether parents will feel comfortable with their children going back to the daycare setting. And so we are left perhaps with the situation where children may need to accompany parents and be in those long lines with increased exposure. For the fiscal impact, the overall impact would perhaps be additional postage costs for mailing out the ballots and for placing a return postage on the envelopes that are sent out so that the burden would not be borne by the voters. When we asked for a fiscal analysis, it was not fully able to be determined, but we do know that the Guam Election Commission has received $600,000 from the CARES Act for Guam's primary and general elections due to the crisis. Perhaps the biggest concern people have is regarding voter fraud. We absolutely do not want to support any measure that is going to increase any situation for voter fraud in high numbers. We actually already allow for a variety of cases where absentee ballot has some exceptions, so we do have some experience in this area. If one is in the military, if one is off island attending school, if one is off island in a foreign location, we are already receiving a variety of ballots coming in that have certain exceptions to them, as such as we're asking for or considering in this bill. But studies show that ballot fraud is actually extremely rare in the United States and that the concerns can be easily addressed. In Oregon, they have sent out more than 100 million mail-in ballots since the year 2000 and have only documented about a dozen cases of proven fraud, or something like 0.00001% of all votes cast. There have been other more exhaustive studies, whereas the conclusion by one election law professor, Richard L. Hasen, has been that out of the billions of votes cast, it is still more likely for an American to be struck by lightning than to commit mail voting fraud. I'm sure GEC can outline some of the known methods of how to deal with these possibilities. We have signatures on file to compare to. There is signature verification software. We can be asking for, and indeed do, ask for specific personal identifying information that is typically only known to the voter. There can be barcode systems to track envelopes, among other systems. I've been working with the Guam Election Commission, and I appreciate the Executive Director, Maria Pangilinan, for that on this bill, and with the chair of the Oversight Committee. We look forward to their continued feedback to serve the people of Guam and what might be the best way forward in ensuring our right to vote in a protected way that is helping ensure our health and safety. This is the time for us as leaders to examine our current systems and find creative solutions that protect us all. So Diyos ma'asi, Mr. Chair, for letting me have that opening statement.
Thank you, Senator Kelly. We will now begin with the Director of the Guam Election Commission, Ms. Pangilinan. Ma'am, please state your name for the record and then continue on.
Diyos ma'asi, Mr. Chairman, si Maria Pangilinan Zu, Director ng Election Commission. My name is Maria Pangilinan. I am the Executive Director of the Guam Election Commission. Si Diyos ma'asi to Senator Kelly for a good start in addressing emergencies and elections. The Commission met last night and agreed that the bill has good intentions and the purpose behind the bill is important to ensure Guam have every opportunity to cast their vote and speak their voice. Commissioners also agreed that if a mechanism is going to be put in place to address future emergencies, then it would better serve the voters of Guam that it's contained in a separate chapter of the election code so that it can be used in the event of almost all future emergencies. The GEC is committed to working together with the legislature to develop legislation that will address not only the current public health emergency, but any other emergencies that may occur in the future. We look forward to submitting written testimony by the commission upon its, we were not able to fully discuss the bill because it wasn't on our agenda. But the commission, and I will work with the legal counsel to collect the comments of all the commissioners and submit it in written testimony soon. To do is Mahasi.
Thank you, Madam Director. The next to testify would be Mr. Kenyon Guerrero. Sir.
Get the dog.
Why are you yelling?
Because
What the hell's wrong with everybody?
Mr. Ken, you're live.
okay, thank you very much. I'm in favor of this bill. Ken Leon Guerrero, Guam Citizens for Public Accountability. I'm testifying in favor of this bill. I'm not going to read my written testimony, but I do have some comments outside of my written testimony that I would like to make. First of all, the bill doesn't go far enough. I was surprised at the low voter turnout that we had in the last two elections. And when I asked people why they don't vote, what do you think the number one reason why they don't vote is? Anybody? All right. They can't get time off from work. Even though the law mandates that all employees must be given 2 hours off to go vote, many of the people I talked to said that they were not allowed to go vote by their employers. They were told instead, you can vote after you get off work, or you can vote before you come to work, but you can't vote during working hours. When we consider how many of our voters are economic hostages stuck in low-wage service sector jobs, having a boss imply very strongly that they are not going to be happy if you take time off during your work hours to go vote is a strong motivation for most people to not vote. The second reason, and it even kind of dovetails into the first, is childcare. They don't have childcare, so they can't go vote because they don't have childcare after 5 o'clock when they get off work. So the number one reason for not voting is Guam employers are relentless about keeping their employees on the job during the workday. And the number two is poor childcare. So the goal of the Guam Election Commission and politicians should be to make it possible for more people to vote. And a vote at home system, which is rapidly gaining acceptance in the United States, counties, and many municipalities have all recorded voter turnout is higher in areas where they have vote at home systems. And as we've seen in the testimony I provided, I documented over the last 4 elections, voter turnout on Guam has been steadily dropping. The problem with a low voter turnout is we have a small number of people making decisions that affect everybody. And that should be rectified. And the easiest way to rectify it would be a vote at home system. And not just during pandemics. You know, this bill needs 2 changes. One, to make vote at home an option for voters. And that could be easily accomplished if we follow the systems that have been set up in states where they have centralized areas for people to vote in person if they want to vote in person. We could have one at Southern High, we could have one at GW, we could have one at Ukadu. And that way people who feel the need to vote in person can go to places that have the logistics and the parking to allow them to vote in person. The second advantage of a vote at home system is people would have time to review and make decisions. So many people just rush in and vote, and they're trying to get in and get out quickly because they feel pressure to get back to work. Having a ballot at home for at least 2 weeks before the mail-in date gives people plenty of time to match the campaigns, match the materials, and match the reports to help them make more informed decisions than we see happening right now. The second thing that I do not like about this bill is that it gives the governor or gives power to cancel an election. During the pandemic of 1918, we had an election and voter turnout was high in the 70s. During World War I, during World War II, we had elections. So there should never be a reason why in a democratic society that we cancel an election, because elections are how we as citizens take control of our government, how we as citizens make our voices heard to make sure that the people that we put in place are following the policies that the majority of us want. Having the ability to use a pandemic or any other excuse, I mean, it would be to take the voice of the people away from the democratic process and could lead to a Russia-style democracy where they cancel election after election. So I'm in favor of the bill. I think the changes that should be made to it is for the Guam Election Commission to send out a mailer to give people the option to check off on a card that they want to vote by mail, and then that could be added to their record. And those that want to vote by mail could receive their ballot by mail. And those that prefer to vote at a location can indicate they have a location. Every state that puts in vote by mail system sees dramatic, in addition to an increase in the percentage of voters participating, also sees dramatic cost in dramatic reduction in the number of spoiled ballots and a dramatic reduction in the cost of holding elections. So if we were to limit the live polling stations to 3 locations instead of 24 or 25 or however many we have now, that would dramatically reduce the cost of holding the elections. And so combined with increasing participation and reducing the cost of elections, it would give Maria's office more power, to more ability to do more voter education and more reach out, because there's a process we need to go through to get to election, to vote at home. But when we look at the states that have shifted away, totally away from vote on site to vote at home, we see that the voter numbers have increased and voter participation is increased, and that's good for democracy. That concludes my remarks, which are in addition to the testimony I have previously supplied to the Guam Election Commission and to this body.
Thank you, Ken. We will begin with questions. The first round, I'd ask everybody just one question, and then on the second round, then we can increase the number. But we'll begin with first the author of the bill, Senator Kelly, and then followed by the speaker, and then Senator Shelton, then Senator Lee. Okay, so Senator Kelly Marsh Title.
Sedus Masi, Mr. Chair. In looking at the bill only gives the Guam Election Commission some flexibility in authority. It doesn't increase the authority for the governor. So I would say the correction there is that it's just meant to, and it states in the bill, to increase the flexibility of the Guam Election Commission to abide by the law and to be able to set some of its rules and policies.
Okay.
Definitely, we want to make sure that we're increasing the voter turnout. And so I do appreciate those views shared by Mr. Ken Leon Guerrero. But the question I do have is to Maria Pangilinan. Typically, to the best of your knowledge, how many absentee ballots are requested each year? So I don't know if you have that off the top of your head, but if you have a general understanding by those on Guam, abroad, in the military.
In total, it's a little over 1,000. Most of them are in office absentee. That's the majority. For off island, it's about a little over 300. Thank you.
Sujas Masi.
Thank you. Madam Speaker. Wait, Owen. Joseph.
Can you hear me now?
There we can hear you now.
Jesus Masi, Mr. Chair. The bill gives voters a choice during the public health emergency to either go to the polls physically or prior to an election day, request an absentee ballot. And once a request is made to the Guam Election Commission and a voter is given an absentee ballot, the mail-in procedure is to have a ballot notarized. And I want to say that given that, does the Guam Election Commission have the capacity to take in an excessive quantity of absentee ballots by mail-in?
Okay, so
And
Speaker, is that your question?
yeah, and because of that, does the private notaries have the capacity to safely service the voting population of Guam should there be more than 50% of the voters who choose to vote by absentee?
I cannot answer your second question with regard to private.
Only one question now. Please just stick to one question and we'll come back for a follow-up.
Yes, I ducktail that in to ask based on the notary perspective
Okay.
because of the quantity.
As far as mail-in ballots, for our voters here on island, do we have the capacity? Our biggest challenge is with most states that do mail-in ballots, they have direct and live connectivity to DMV to be able to validate voters. The biggest challenge we have in that regard is that we don't have live connectivity to DMV. Other than that, do we have capacity to handle lots more mail-in ballots? We could, but again, putting together a system for mail-in ballots, with regard to what we do now, it's possible, but it's a big challenge ahead to make sure that voter fraud is as little as possible.
Oh, okay.
Hello's unmuted. Mute. Okay, give it. Senator Shelton, ma'am. Hold on, we'll unmute you. Folks, please don't unmute yourself. We'll do it on our end. Otherwise, we're gonna get cross on this, okay? Senator Shelton, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Ms. Pangilinan and Mr. Leon Guerrero for your testimonies. I appreciate it. Ms. Pangilinan, can you walk us through, for those of us who have never voted through absentee voting and for the viewing public, can you walk us through the Guam Election Commission's process for absentee voting and share with us the safeguards that are in place to protect the voting process?
Thank you. So if you're off island, you would go to our website and request for an absentee ballot by downloading our form right off the website. If you are also not registered, as in the case of some of our students off island, the request for absentee ballot doubles as registration, but only in the time frame before registration ends. So the off-island person will request for a ballot. He will indicate his preference, whether it be an email ballot, a fax ballot, or a ballot that we can mail to him or her. We receive that. We have 48 hours to we have 48 hours to process the absentee ballot once it's time to start processing them. And please note that absentee ballots for uniform and overseas citizens must be mailed or sent to them no more than 45 days, no less than 45 days before the election. So that's why we've harped with, we've commented with the legislature that the timing between the primary and the general doesn't leave the Election Commission much room to accommodate that federal mandate. So now we send the ballot to the person off island. If the person is an overseas citizen, a citizen in a foreign country, he or she does not need a notary. If the person is a military or is in the military or a dependent, he or she does not need a notary. But if the person is none of these, they would have to take the ballot, go vote by a notary, and then they have to indicate, the form is such that the notary must witness, not to see the ballot, not to see who the person voted, that that person is the person that voted the ballot. They in turn take the ballot, put it in the ballot envelope. There's 3 envelopes that they get. They put it in the ballot envelope that is that's stamped already, and they mail it to us. Those that are overseas, they don't get the stamps. They don't get the postage. We only put postage for those that are in the United States, and not even for the military. So we get those ballots. Those ballots, that would be the end of the voters' responsibility with us. So we get those ballots, and we open the courier envelope. Okay, inside the courier envelope would be the affidavit envelope. That affidavit envelope will be, we've sent them an affidavit envelope, and they will attest that it's who they are. We will see if all the requirements of the Guam election code are met. If it is, we will put it in the safe deposit box, where we can say that will go to the precinct on election day for them to open up. Please note that there's the courier envelope. That's the envelope that it's mailed in. Inside the courier envelope, there's an affidavit envelope and a ballot envelope. The ballot envelope is totally unmarked. The voted ballot goes in the ballot envelope. The ballot envelope goes in the affidavit envelope. Those 2 envelopes are not opened here at GEC. Those 2 envelopes are opened at the precinct. For those that come in to vote in office because they're leaving, they actually go through the same process, but almost all of our staff are notaries. So when they come in, the request for absentee ballot and the affidavit is all verified and validated by the staff here inside of 30 days before the election. Did I miss anything? So that's what the voters go through. The and then Senator Shelton, we have to wait for 10 working days for the off-island envelopes, off-island ballots to come in. We will count all the ballots that are postmarked by election day and come to us via the U.S. Post Office by the 10th working day after the election. Those ballots that come in after the election day, we will hold them here in our cabinets, in our safe deposit cabinets. We will hold them until the commission is ready to count those ballots. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you very much for that. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, and thank you, Senator Shelton. Senator Lee? One minute. There you go. You're on.
Buenas, Mr. Chair. Thank you very much. And thank you to the author of the bill, as well as Maria and Ken for lending your voices to this discussion. I wholeheartedly agree with many of the challenges in our current system, and I certainly support measures to make voting more accessible to eligible voters. My concern here with this bill, and hopefully this is a question that Maria can answer for all of us, is around timing and so the timing for this bill. So I think we have to really consider the GEC deadline. So if this bill were to pass, what would be the date? Would you continue the same date for mail-in ballots, given that with the passage of this bill, you can also anticipate much more participation in this way? Would GEC need more time to be able to tabulate these ballots? And if you could give us kind of an idea from your perspective in terms of the resources that you have, just speak a little bit to the timing of this.
Okay, so our parameters, our Senator Regine, is that we have to meet the federal mandate.
Right.
And the federal mandate is we have to send it out 45 days before the election, and we have to give the voter 10 working days after the election to receive their ballots. The resources we have, the biggest challenge, I say, and I continue to say, is that our connectivity to DMV. We use DMV to validate the voters we have online voter registration and we have motor voter registration. Validating those voters we still probably, and this is the first time we'll do it, we'll have to do it this 2020 election cycle, is validating voters that vote online and voters that vote at motor voter. As far as resources, one of the things that we're nervous about is validation of the signatures. And Wisconsin validates their signature by sight. Wisconsin doesn't use software. But the Wisconsin election community have gone through months and months and months of training. As far as Colorado and Oregon, they are the leaders in vote by mail. Oregon has done it for over 20 years. Colorado has the latest and the greatest equipment all the time. And so both of them are connected live to DMV, I believe. I know Colorado is. Oregon, I haven't had conversation with them about that. As far as resources go, from last election, it cost $3.83 to mail the ballot the way it is. We've been looking at how to make it more cost effective. And I think the lowest we have is about $2 to mail the ballot and to have them get it back to us. We know that the United States Post Office has been a great partner with the election industry across the United States. But then again, we have I don't know if they're unique, but a lot of us don't have home delivery.
Mm.
A lot of us get mail delivered to our mom's house,
Right.
and a lot of us share the post office with the whole family, the post office box with whole family.
Right.
So one address can receive maybe 10, up to 10 maybe, ballots via mail. So mind you, the staff, and you know they're great, right? The
Yeah.
staff have been working. The staff have been working to look at all the options that we have, and to make it a little lighter too, the staff might one day be certified nursing assistants, because we've had to put measures in place as we began to accept candidate filing.
I see.
Okay, and from the top of my head and from the help of 3 staff that are sitting next to me, that's as much as I can tell you, except in the current situation with the current law, the day we have to mail out the ballots based on the federal court mandate is July 15th.
Okay. Thank you very much, Ms. Pangilinan, and I'm certainly looking forward to hearing feedback from your board. Hopefully it's on the agenda for the next board meeting. But I will work with the chair and the author of this bill to see if we can address some of the concerns that you raised today. Sujos Masi.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Senator and senators, may I just put in one more piece of information? Okay.
Sure.
Right now, candidate filing deadline is June 30th. And please know that the federal court mandate is for us to mail out ballots July 15th. Thank you.
Sujos Masi. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Senator Therese, try. There you go, ma'am.
Hi. Thank you both for your testimony. And Maria, the money that you received for the COVID, it says 600,000 on the fiscal note. That is, and it says that it might be used for postage. What is it enough to hook you up to DMV the way you want?
Senator Therese, I don't know what it's going to take. We don't know what it will require. When we started back in 2015 to connect to them, DMV had the bigger challenge of what is it? The real ID. Okay, so that's been their biggest challenge, is to accommodate real ID and to accommodate the online motor voter and online voter registration. To address your question of whether we have enough money to do that, I don't know. I'm sorry. We will talk with DMV again to update them. As you know, they haven't started serving the public, so we cut online and motor voter registration some time ago in March because of the upcoming special election in Jotnia. And senators, we are still having a special election on May 30th in Jotnia.
What do you mean you cut? Sorry, I don't know.
Oh, registration. I'm sorry, Senator Therese. Voter registration ended before COVID or during COVID. When COVID hit, we were having district registration already. We cut motor voter online, and we asked volunteer registrars to turn in their forms. That normally happens 21 days before an election. When that happens, district registration kicks in. District registration at the mayor's office. So for the special election, District registration was ongoing at Junior Mayor's office and at GEC. When COVID hit, we killed that. We went on, district registration is going on now only at Junior Mayor's office and the Guam Election Commission as of Monday this week. Anybody can register, Senator Therese, anybody can register at the Junior Mayor's office and at the Guam Election Commission. Thank you. Sorry about that.
So do you have a plan for the 600,000?
We have initially, and we've already put it in place, some of it, for the candidate filing. So we've had to make sure that once we start accommodating the public, we have purchased equipment. We have the infrared thermometers. We've asked nurses to help us with putting together what we have to do to protect the staff and the public as well. So yes, we have some of the plan, but not all of it.
All right. Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you, Senator Therese. Senator Pito Terlai, do you have any questions, sir?
Thank you very much. First off, I want to thank the director of the Guam Election Commission for joining us this morning. Madam Director, you mentioned that the deadline for the absentee ballot is June 15, right?
No. Are you look? June 15th is the day we have to make. I'm sorry, July 15th. Senator Pito, I mentioned July 15th. July 15th is the day that the Guam Election Commission must send out ballots to those absentee applicants, to those absentee voters that have sent us their requests and met all the requirements.
Madam Director, a special election is going to happen May 30, right?
That's correct.
Okay, so what is the timeline of when you send out the absentee ballot to whoever you're going to send it to in the States? You're giving them something like 10 days for it to come back, right?
That's correct, sir.
10 days? That's right, 10 days. So what is the time frame where you can allow, after that 10 days, where you can allow to count those absentee ballots?
We count
You
it
give them
after 5 o'clock on the 10th day. That's
after 5
what we
o'clock
have
on the 10th
followed.
day.
Yes.
So if you don't get the absentee ballot on the 11th, for example, it's not counted. It's not going to be counted.
That's correct. That's correct.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator Chulai. Moving, we have Madam Minority Leader, Senator Teletagui.
Mr. Chair. I apologize, Maria, for not being here. I had to step out and come back in, so I might have missed something, and I hope I'm not asking to repeat it. But I think right now we are gonna, Mr. Chair, go around one more time, right, with questions. We're allowed one question and then come around for the next. Okay. So Maria, I believe you had a public. I think you had a hearing, not a hearing, but a board meeting last night. Is that true?
Yes, it is.
Okay. Yeah. Was there anything that was discussed regarding this bill at the board, and what was said, please?
In public comment and open discussion, the board, the discussion was during public comment and open discussion. And I have to be careful because, Senator Tello, the bill, it was a reconvened meeting and bill number 330 was not on the agenda. But with legal counsel advice, I can collect comments from the board and submit it as written testimony before, soon to the legislature.
Okay. That was my one question, Mr. Chair. I'll wait for my next round. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Tello. We have Senator Mary Torres, ma'am. Owen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was just waiting for the unmute. I want to acknowledge Ken Leon Guerrero for your very excellent testimony. I was reading through it and I appreciate that you sent the information from the Pew Institute, Pew Trust, from the National Center of NCLS, and also some law from Hawaii. I do agree wholeheartedly with your testimony about the need to advance to something more feasible that would encourage voters to come out and vote. And many of the prior legislations that I had introduced, even in my first term, had to do with easing the requirements to make it a lot more convenient for people to register to vote. And I think that has had a lot of positive effects, as Maria Pangilinan can attest. We have seen a surge in voter registrations as a result of some of that prior legislation that I had worked on. But going a step further, it does no good if you expand voter registration but don't have a corresponding increase in voter turnout. I also agree with the notion that we must do everything to encourage voter turnout, and that always comes with easing the burden, and whatever that burden is, whether it's a personal something is inhibiting them personally, or something outside their control, like employers making it more difficult for them to come out and vote. But that said, Maria, I understand too that over these past few years, you've had a keen interest and desire to interface with Department of Revenue and Taxation to allow, for example, for true online voter registration, because I think right now it's a hybrid type of system where there's still a physical verification between the Guam Election Commission and Department of Revenue and Taxation. And I hope that we can finally come to some resolution of that in terms of funding the appropriate computer software program that will allow a true interface between GEC and DRT. But I just wanted to point out that, in looking at all the things that would discourage us from proceeding with vote at home programs or absentee things, we really need to, as a body, get over this phobia of voter fraud, because it's those sorts of boogeymen under the bed that prevents us from really advancing. And we've seen the models in other states where it does work. And with everything, there's always going to be a downside to everything you do. But the advantage far outweighs those little quirks that happen with any system. But my comment is just twofold. One is I wanted to acknowledge Ken Leon Guerrero and thank you for the links. I'm going to take some time to study what you've provided. And Maria, I also want to encourage you to please, let's continue to work on getting our systems updated and modernized so that your jobs can be a lot easier and access to voting, either through registration or voting itself, can be more convenient for the general public. And that's all my general comments, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Mary Torres. Senator Will Castro, sir. Oh, and don't unmute. Don't unmute. We'll do the mute. Oh, there you go. There you go, Senator Will.
Okay, thank you, Chair. So, abiding by your rule to ask one question per round, this would be my first one, either to the prime author or yourself, Mr. Chairman, or anybody on the panel. How would you validate whether a voter requesting for an absentee ballot has met any one of the 7 criteria? I think there's 7 provisions in your bill. as having qualified for that, as opposed to someone simply wanting to vote from home because they can. And the reason why I asked that, Mr. Chairman, if I could provide some context, is because that's going to be my second question later. There's a significant cost associated with mailing these out in a way that can validate your identity, I would presume. So is my question to you, Chairman, or the prime author, is how would you establish if the voter requesting for the absentee ballot has met any one of the 7 provisions listed in the bill? Or is it even required?
Ms. Marie, if you can answer that, if it's possible.
Yes. So for the in-office absentee voting, the process is attestation. That means they sign an affidavit that is notarized that they met one of the 7 criteria.
Is he still there? Oh, there. Yes, I see Senator Will. And so I just might add to it that this bill is not creating 7 criteria. It's just expanding the existing criteria to add just one more element that would be reviewed and adopted by the Guam Election Commission board before the last criteria that we're considering would be placed on and how it would be rolled out. So the other criteria have already been there for a long time, and the executive director can speak to the success of those or not.
Okay. Will, Senator Will, can you unmute yourself because we can't unmute you? Can you go ahead and unmute it?
Okay, thank you. And so, Senator Kelly, thank you for that. Director Pangilinan, thank you for that. And I guess that would lead me to my point on the 7th criteria that you did create, subsection H. I would have to assume then that if we're in a state of emergency, as defined here, that everybody qualifies for this absentee ballot by virtue of the fact that we're in a state of emergency, as evidenced by an executive order, for example. So in each of the previous criteria, I'm sure the director and the commission have their own checklist as to how you qualify for that. So I'm assuming then if the EO came out that we're in a state of emergency, that everyone then, by definition, qualifies for an absentee ballot because of subsection H. And we can come back to that, Mr. Chairman, in the interest of time, but I think that would be my point based on the responses.
Thank you, Senator Will. We will now proceed. My colleagues, just please understand, and everybody that's participating, all the comments and the questions being asked, I ask everyone to please submit all additional questions you may have or possible amendments to this bill. This bill may come out of the committee as an amended bill or a substitute bill because of all the different parts that are being changed, that needs to be changed, that Ms. Pangilinan has presented. We need to take a look at it and the issues and make sure that when the bill comes up, because the timetable is already running and we just got to move on this, and we got to be cognitive of the federal mandate by July 15th and so forth. So we need to propose quite a few things. All right. We will now proceed to Madam Speaker Tina Munoz-Barnes, ma'am. For your second round, you can ask up to no more questions. Senator Amanda Shelton's not there. Move to Senator Lee. We're going to open now to 2 more questions, 2 sets of questions now, so we can speed it up a little, because I know that for every question, everybody really has a secondary question to catch the gist of their questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Maria, this question is for you. If you could just provide the committee some additional background information. You know, we were talking a little bit about the challenges between the connectivity between GEC and DRT. And so if you could just explain that a little bit more and give the committee maybe some background on how much it would cost, what the issue is. Is it a software issue, as was alluded to before, and what the legislature can do to try to bridge that gap. So, because I think this bill is important, but if we're able to find a solution that goes way further, I think we should also consider that as well.
Thank you.
Sorry, so Maria, could you just tell us a little bit more about the connectivity issue between DRT? Just give us some background on that, and maybe if you have an estimate of how much it would cost to provide that software, or to have we looked at that? Is that a question for DRT?
Well, since I think 2016, we've issued a purchase order for the Real ID vendor of the DRT. But we were, Real ID was still in the works. So when we've had quite a few challenges, but at this point in time, we had requested for some sort of the term I learned was data dump, where DMV would provide us data on at a certain intervals of time, and we will be able to validate. We requested for authorization to do that, waiting for the response from DMV, and COVID hit. So I know that we have to deal with DMV, OTEC, the Real ID vendor, and the keeper of the DMV data is another vendor. So we know that that's a challenge in and of itself, to have to deal with all of them with DMV as the center station.
Yeah,
Okay.
I really appreciate that response, because we actually have an informational hearing later today with OTEC. And so, we'll be asking them to comment and give the legislature additional feedback about how we can address this issue. Mr. Lujan might be able to give us some insight there, and share some information about maybe the current vendor and how we can expand to allow for that connectivity between GEC and DRT DMV. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Lee. Senator Therese.
Thank you. I was also going to follow up. I've seen that other states have pretty much just decided already to send ballots to everyone. So they're taking, instead of waiting for them to download it online and send it to you, an application, they're sending everyone an application. And so I wonder if you have an estimate for that cost, or have you guys discussed this on the board level? Like those kind of options that you actually might not need legislation for, and just to send out those applications to everyone. Or I guess you would need this bill to pass for them to qualify for absentee ballot, right? How much would it cost to send out to all voters, to send out an application, or
at current cost, a guesstimate application. So at current cost, if we're going to send out the ballots, right, after the application has been received and vetted, it'll be about $165,000. Okay, to send out application forms for the absentee ballots, to actually mail it out, it's $24,200. We do have the absentee ballot online.
Right.
The absentee ballot applications online. Just so you know, it's already online. So we may be able to reduce the cost of sending out the application for absentee ballots. Please note that the addresses we have may not be the current addresses. Even with motor voter registration, we've increased our voter registration by plenty. But even those that we send confirmation letter that they've been registered to vote and they can vote in a certain polling site, they're coming back to us in the hundreds. So we don't, that's current. They gave us the current, as of, we started doing motor voter in March, the end of March of 2019. And fully implemented motor voter March 2019. And that's just last year. We still are getting hundreds of our confirmation letters returned to us because we don't have the correct addresses.
All right. Well, what other solutions has the board proposed besides, extra protection at the polling sites, to make this a faster process or more convenient for everyone?
There's been open discussion amongst the staff. Oh, we continue to dialogue with the staff, going back and forth, always me playing the devil's advocate. One of the possibilities, probably a probability, are vote centers. Vote centers are opening up sites, for example, in the northern, southern, and central district, anywhere from 1 to 2 weeks before election to a month maybe, where people from those areas can come in to vote. And then so they will come, those vote centers. Of course, lead staff will be the GEC, and we will hire temporary staff to assist with them, and they will be open before election. And we will accommodate them, and staff are talking about scheduling so that we don't get crowds at a time, depending on how long we're going to open. We will schedule, who should come in to vote, that other procedural possibilities in accommodating the voter. So, Senator, with the upcoming special election, what we talked about drive-through voting up at MU Lujan. Unfortunately, that's not very probable because it's only one entrance and one exit, as opposed to we would rather have an entrance point and a different exit point. We've talked about it, and then it becomes other stuff for the COVID measures is our precinct official training. Instead of taking one district at a time and putting 15 people in the training room, we are now going to do 3 different training evenings. So we will have one precinct with 5 precinct officials being trained at a time. As far as the voters are concerned, we are looking into it for the voters of Jomya. This is the first time I'm going to say it. We will encourage the voters of Jomya to bring their pen and to make sure that they know that to follow the executive order, we need to make sure that they have a mask. But we won't turn them away. We have masks and we have pens for them to use. But we will encourage them to bring their mask and to bring their pens so that we can make it more efficient. Okay.
All right. So the money that you received as the grant, was when you applied for it, did you make a list of how you would use it, or was it just pretty much an automatic grant that was given to you, and now you're going to plan how to spend it? I'm talking about the COVID grant that was indicated on the fiscal note. It says 600,000 related COVID grant. That's what it says.
So your question is about the CARES grant, right? Is that correct?
Correct. Yes. Yes.
Where Election Commission got directly $600,000. It was almost automatic. It was almost automatic. So we will turn in. They've given us procurement guidelines. They've given us some, but it's up to us to tell them when. We have, just like all of the CARES grant funding, it reverts back to the U.S. Treasury December 31st. We will, so, I'm sorry, ma'am, you broke up, Senator Therese.
No,
I didn't hear you.
Yeah. No, I was just going to say, so I do hope that some of that money can be put into some type of permanent infrastructure, such as the, connection to DMV, if that's what we need for this type of voting going forward, for increased capacity for voters, increase ability for you to verify that these addresses are correct, or what are we going to do when they're not, to settle these issues. So yeah, I agree with whatever measures are going to expand voting, so, and make it more convenient. So thank you for all your efforts, and thank you, Mr. Lundberg. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Therese. Senator Pito, you are live.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Madam Director. Several weeks ago, I addressed this question to the Election Commission regarding the new election law. The election law na, if you're staying in Derido, for example, then you have to vote in Derido. However, if you did not change your voting district since the last election, they told me that your vote would be valid, notwithstanding the new law, the new election law. Can you kind of just give us an heads up on that, on the take on what information, the information that I was given, that if you vote for, let's say, for example, in Derido last year, and let's say you're staying in Derido and you've been voting in Marizo, so your vote will be valid on election day.
Okay, sir, thank you. The process is such that voter registration is based on an affidavit that says, I swear I live in Derido. How that's taken care of with regard to whether the person lives in Derido and should vote in Derido, how that is taken care of is through the voter challenge process at the latest on election day. So, Senator, if someone comes to Jotnia and votes and says, and before the voter signs on the voter registry that has his or her name, before the voter signs, people from that precinct who are in the polling room can challenge that voter. That is how the process works.
Madam Director, so if it's not challenged, then your vote is good.
If he's on the voter registry, yes, that's correct, Senator Pito.
Okay, thank you, Madam Director. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Senator Terlai. Now we'll move to Senator Tello. Unmute Tello and go ahead and mute me.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair, Sijus Masi. I have no more questions here. I'm looking forward to doing some more research on it. And I just wanted to thank you, Maria and Ken, for taking the time today to meet with us and answering our questions. Greatly appreciate it. Sijus Masi, create a great week.
And then on
We get it.
Senator Castro, will. Keep your hands up. There you go. There you go, Senator.
Mr. Chairman, I'll go ahead and submit my questions to you via email. I do have several more, but I'll go ahead and send them to you directly. If
So
you have time,
you don't
fire away.
No, you got time. You got time to ask questions, but okay. Going around, I haven't asked any questions yet because I was happy that I heard that Ms. Pangilinan brought up the voter centers. That I'm actually looking forward to. Does any other colleague have a question? Senator Kelly, I'm not going to ask you yet because you're the author. So just relax, ma'am. You get the tail end. Does anyone have any other questions? Unmute everybody.
Carlos Macho on the PP. And he hired 200 employees back.
Madam Speaker, do you have any questions, ma'am, or you're good? Senator Lee?
No, thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Ms. Pangilinan and Ms.
Senator Torres, I apologize. I'm sorry. Do you have any question, ma'am?
I do. I just want to ask Mrs. Pangilinan, is the board right now presently planning for the election process to happen the way that it's traditionally happened, or has there been discussion about alternative election procedures this year?
Senator Mary, it's all within the current law. Discussions are centered within the current law. As suggestions come up, we're tasked to look at what changes need to be made in the code. We are looking at changes. We are addressing required changes in the code. Should we go with vote centers? Should we go with vote by mail? We are looking at those, ma'am.
Okay. All right. Because most other states are also looking at alternatives. I mean, we even know today that schools, universities are also going on alternative things. I know that's not governed by statute, but for example, the business as usual scheme is already being contemplated to change this year. So thank you. I guess there'll be follow-up questions that I can direct to outside of this discussion. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator Torres. I believe there's a wrap up of all my colleagues. Does anybody have any questions? Senator Therese, do you have a follow-up question you wanted to bring? Senator Therese? Unmute.
Okay. All right. No, well, no, just the same stuff. And so I would just ask that the Election Commission, if you could be aggressive. So we need to move on this fast. And if it needs to be the this bill plus, then please let us know. But in addition to, keeping a traditional election safe, if there are other options, please send those to us, because I think we're looking at a, extended pandemic, regardless of what condition we're in. Mm-hmm. And so I just think safety, increased voting, you can't lose. It's a win-win for everyone, and that's what we should be moving forward. And I'm really hoping for permanent infrastructure going forward. So I'm just asking you to please consider your use of the CARES money. And if you could send us something that shows what you're planning to use it for, I'd appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Therese. Also extend same request to the election commission. I would extend it to Mr. Ken Guerrero. Sir, you've spoken on many bills. I asked also that you to take a look at the bill and then put in possibly some of the amendments that we may want to consider, and we can address this also to Ms. Pangilinan and to all the colleagues, because I tried once to get a bill in for the election commission, and it fell apart. So I'm not gonna go there no more. I'm gonna do it, a small bite at a time, and we'll move on. Okay, so please feel free, Ken.
I will. I just wanted to make a comment. I was pleased to see that Maria, doing her usual thorough efforts, has already been working on some ways to deal with this, like with the centers. I think that's a great idea, because by opening the window up to a week and having 3 centers, I think it shows a lot of thought on how we can transition to where we need to be in the future. And where we need to be in the future, I believe, is vote by mail with centers as an option for those who want to vote in person. And I think that right now it sounds like the only thing standing between that and reality is a little resource diversion to give Maria what she needs from a technical point of view. And I would be in full support of anything that would allow her to do her job better, because as we've seen over the years that I've been involved, her people do a great job at registering new voters, but we have those little roadblocks like employer reluctance and daycare scarcity that are holding back the full execution of the efforts of her people at registering voters.
All right, thank you, Mr. Nungro. That being said, and I don't see anyone waving to or commenting that they wanted to make any more comments. As the author of the bill, Senator Kelly Marsh, if you have any questions, I would hope not, you would end up closing, because my colleagues, we would all have to get together. We'd have to give all our ideas and our amendments to what we need to discuss and how we want to move forward with this bill. So Senator Kelly Marsh, please provide any closing statements you may want to give to her bill.
Right, Siduous Masi, Mr. Chair, and again, I just am so thankful for everybody here. It's so important that we are looking at getting beyond the traditional, as so many have noted. The landscape has changed, times have changed, technology has changed, and this is a real important time to be looking at how we need to change with it. And so we've had, as has been mentioned, excellent testimony by Mr. Ken Leon Guerrero, which I really appreciate. We have the ever thoughtfulness of the executive director of GEC. She very kindly spared quite a bit of time to share some of what they've been exploring, everything from the voting centers to curbside voting to mobile plexiglass coverage to ensure safety for the staff. It just has gone on and on what they have explored. And so we should all be really appreciative of their diligence on all of our behalf, and all of the senators who've been so conscientious in thinking this through, how it might be improved, or whether we need to, and I do agree that because of the landscape and all the changes, we need to look at the long term. And so this may be, as Mr. Leon Guerrero and several of the senators have pointed out, we may need to look at this in a much bigger view of changing, as 29 states have done, where they make the voting either by mail default, or that you just don't need a reason because of the convenience or other issues that may be coming up to vote by mail. And it may take a little bit of a learning curve, but also some growing pains. But in the long run, we're here to serve the community for the long-term benefits. So if I can, I had a few questions, but I think that if I just do the closing statement, they'll be covered and we can get to them by mail as needed. So just to remind us all, which really in this part we don't need a reminder, we're in a global and an island crisis that is due to this COVID-19, and it potentially can really negatively impact our scheduled elections. The CDC, the ACLU, and some of the other entities that senators and others have mentioned are calling for us to change and to save our vote, to protect our right to vote, but to do it and figure out those ways, as difficult and challenging as it may be, to provide it in as safe a manner as possible. So indeed, we are hearing from many in the community. Over 230 people have signed a petition in a matter of a few days, and more will perhaps continue to sign on, that they are requesting mail by vote, or at least some sort of change in the landscape of traditional voting to take place. We do have many ways of validating people who are voters. There are signatures on file. There is signature verification software. I don't think we really asked about how attainable that is and the cost of that, but I'm sure the GEC is on top of that. And there's requesting for personal identification information, the last 4 digits of our social security number, our driver's license number, our address, our birthday, so many ways that, you know, it's just information that typically only we know, and certainly only we know in a conglomerate. There's barcode systems to track envelopes and other security measures that are out there. We're already contending with vote by mail for overseas and elsewhere, with and without notaries. So this could be something, if we authorize this, that GEC would put their expertise together and determine, do we still need notaries? Other states have gone through without it, so what are they doing to safeguard? Because at all costs, we must safeguard the authenticity of the voters and the voting process. So that should not be, compromised. And studies are showing that voter fraud is really rare. That one election law professor, after looking at this 20-year study, I believe it was, the study that covered 20 years, said that really it was more likely to be struck by lightning than to have people committing voter fraud. But again, that doesn't mean that we want to compromise anything at all. This is the time for us to examine our current systems and to find solutions and prepare for the long-term needs of the community. Bills like this are important in getting us all to examine the landscape, and I'm so appreciative that that's exactly what this bill has done. It's caused us to look at the landscape, have really good discussion, and we will either amend this bill or broaden it so that it takes into bigger considerations for more long-term solutions. I thank everybody for contributing to it. And thank you, Mr. Chair, for letting me close.
You're welcome. Thank you, Senator Kelly. There being no additional, there's no additional individuals that would like to testify on this bill. The committee will continue to receive testimony up to 10 days or even further if needed. And then I'd like to, and you may submit your testimony to the mailroom of the Guam Legislature or through email at senatorjoesanaugustine@gmail.com. Again, I want to thank everyone for attending the public hearing on Zoom and for the people of Guam that are listening. And that this bill 330-35 hearing is now adjourned. It is now 10:30. You all have a nice day. Take care. Thank you.